This is the very first episode of the Dish and Ish podcast. That is Damon Benning. You know who that is. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be coming to you every week with a little bit of sports, a little bit of ish, a lot of everything in between.
Some of this, some of that.
Yeah, that's what the ish is about, right?
It is. It could be anything. You just never know with that.
That's true. And honestly, we probably don't know either, to be fair. When we start,
yeah, that sounded like a whole lot of nonsense.
Because we almost never do when we get into the nonsense.
We usually have a plan, and then
we tend to deviate.
Can't quite get it right.
It's a little like, oh, squirrel. Here we go.
Exactly.
But no, we've got a ton of good stuff for you as always.
Don't blame Shane.
I wouldn't expect a lot of guests on this podcast. It's pretty much just going to be me and DB, I think.
Unless
we have someone we want to talk to.
Occasional buddy. We start arguing Marvel versus DC. I got to get Matt DeMarinis.
That's because he's the only guy who likes DC in the world.
You're such a hater.
I'm not a hater. I just don't like
that. So they don't make as good as movies as Marvel. And it doesn't mean like he's the only guy that likes DC.
Listen, I know other people like DC Comics. He's the only one who ride and dies for DC movies.
Did he go see Flash already?
He probably did.
Yeah,
well, probably opening night. He was the only one.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna watch it. I'm waiting for Tuesday.
It only made like $50 million.
I'll watch it when it's free.
Is that a bad number?
That's a real bad number.
Really bad. I think it's like number out of all the DC movies. I think it's like 8 or 9.
Really?
For like
what
in
did
the
people
top
have
10.
against Barry?
Well,
they said it's very messy.
The actor is a little problematic.
Well, he's had some issues.
He's had some problems, and I don't know that people love that.
But wait a minute, though, Liquid. Don't do that to me. What do you mean it's a little messy?
They got stuff to clean up. That's what they say.
What is it? Is it disjointed? They didn't like the storyline?
I heard the CGI is bad. They cheaped out on a bunch of the CGI. And so it looks bad.
Hey, so where are you guys reading all this? Because I want to catch up.
Honestly, it's I
on Variety,
TikTok. I have a lot of movie stuff on TikTok.
So do I.
And so sometimes they kind of get. I love my TikTok algorithm is on point right now.
So mine was better. I went through a stretch where I wasn't messing around with it a ton, but right now I'm about restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I'm getting these cleanses. So maybe I was on that for a second.
So if you get into fitness stuff, sometimes you gravitate. The algorithm's maybe you would like these cleanses that make you poop your brains out instead of fitness. It's no, I meant workout stuff.
Yeah.
Not interested in pooping my brains out.
That and movie clips. But there's a couple of, I'm not going to fake there, Ravi. There's a couple of shows that I've gotten into strictly from TikTok. I would have never watched Sons of Anarchy without TikTok.
Ooh, see, so I watched it for a while when it was on live, and I stopped.
Really?
So that show gave me anxiety, man. It
but
was stressing me out.
You don't like those. You don't like those You're a feel good guy.
Well, so I'll watch some thrillers and some action and intense stuff like that. But here was my problem. So when I was watching it live, I was watching week to week, right? And so not knowing what happened week to week was stressing me out. So if I can binge those type of shows because then I get a resolution. That's all I need with suspenseful stuff is a resolution. So I'm more likely to watch a suspenseful movie than I am a suspenseful TV show because a movie, it's 2 hours done. I got my resolution. I'm good.
So you don't necessarily need a feel-good moment. I
need resolution. Yeah. Okay. If you just leave me hanging out there, that gives me anxiety, man. I don't like that.
Yeah. I thought Sons of Anarchy was way good.
No, when I watched it was really good. I was just at the time, because of how I was watching, I was I can't keep doing this to myself.
So there's a couple more and I know I'm late to the game. Mm-hmm. And it's most things with me. I stay on.
Hey, better late than never. You're
delay.
Right. Yeah.
But I gotta see Peaky Blinders.
Oh, so the first 4 seasons.
There's another one too.
What?
Banshee.
I haven't seen Banshee. The first
Banshee looks like it would be pretty legit, at least according to TikTok.
The first 4 seasons of Peaky Blinders are elite. The last couple are okay, but the first 4 are. I just rewatched them.
Okay.
Within the last month, I just rewatched the first 4 seasons. Elite.
So is this one of those things with Black Spot and some of these other shows that have been on streamed? Mm-hmm. They just don't know how to get out.
Yeah, well,
that was the big thing with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
People hated the last couple of seasons, and
well,
I never saw Game of Thrones.
So Game of Thrones had a different problem, right? Is like it had to leave its source material because the source material was over. Like the guy never finished the books.
Oh, he just like
George R. R. Martin never finished the books, and so the last 2 seasons, I think it's 2, have to go off and finish on their own because there's no source material.
Seems like made up.
And so people didn't really like it. I didn't mind it as much, but I also binged it, so I wasn't like if you were watching that thing from the start, you were waiting like 12 years for a resolution.
Did you see Breaking Bad?
Yep. Yeah.
People didn't love that ending.
Oh, they're wrong. Breaking Bad's a good ending.
Okay, what about Better Call Saul?
Also good. Probably a better ending than Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad's probably a better show. But Better Call Saul's still very good.
If you have a prequel, don't you kind of know how it's going to end because of the characters? Or?
Yeah. So the interesting they did with Better Call Saul, though, is they just kind of weave in the Walter White of it all. And it's really about Saul's kind of origin story. So it's a totally different story, just kind of set in the same world, and you've got some overlap.
Okay.
So it's interesting because it doesn't matter that you know how it ends because you don't know how Saul got there, and that's kind of the point. They did a really good job with that one. A lot of prequels are kind of clumsy and fan service. They did a good job with Better Call Saul.
What about Succession?
See,
I never watched it, so I don't know.
I liked the first couple seasons a lot.
That seems like a show that would give you anxiety because everybody said you don't have anybody to root for.
So, yeah, that was a tough one because I didn't like any of the characters.
Yeah.
And at some point, I want to like somebody that I'm watching on TV, right? It's like I wanted them all to burn to the ground. It's like, you're all terrible people. I don't like any of you. You don't deserve anything.
I've watched some shows where I'm like, no, this is just too heavy.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was like that with what was the show I watched where The Watcher? Very disappointed.
Okay, I didn't watch The Watcher.
Yeah, don't. Ending sucked. And it was heavy. Like nothing good was. It was just one struggle. I kind of felt like that with what's the show with the guy that came. It's kind of like the Coke industry.
Oh, is it Narcos?
Nope. He was black. It just started, and the season just ended. It was 6 seasons.
The Wire?
Nope.
Okay.
I never saw The Wire.
Okay.
This is more recent. Really good young actor. I watched the first 3 seasons, and nothing good was happening.
Yeah.
He got pit against his uncle. They used to be on the same side, and then his uncle ended up getting killed. He had the curl.
What do you remember? What like service it was on, or where it
Netflix?
Was on? Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm gonna find it for you. I'm gonna find it for you.
I agree with you though. I need some wins, right? Like I need some positive things to happen, even if it's not an overly cheery show.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing good ever happens, I'm gonna have a hard time watching it.
Yeah, nothing good was happening.
If I don't like any of the characters, like I need somebody to root for.
Shane, remember, and like the image on the show, half his face was maroon, the other half was yellow. It was like in a color contrast.
This did not come up on my Netflix algorithm. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Come on,
I don't know what it was.
All right, I'll figure it out.
Google Netflix cocaine show. I don't.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to. I'm actually.
That might bring it up. You're gonna get Narcos first, but it might bring it up after that.
It actually did pop up. Narcos. Netflix cocaine shows. Cocaine Cowboys.
And that's
yeah, Shane, I know you have allergies and you keep blaming it on
the grass.
Not Griselda. Like they're going Coke. Is it crack or Coke?
You know,
Put that crap on me.
It was brothers, so I think it was crack. Like we weren't making enough money yet to get in the Coke business.
What? I don't know if you can say that.
Snowfall.
Snowfall. I was gonna say snow, but I was like, is that the right thing?
Snowfall. I see. Listen, you're tag team. Your Google search history. But once I went from cocaine to crack, I got away from Narcos and Griselda and got the brothers.
Got away from the cartel and the white folks.
Yeah,
and you got it.
I got into what we do, man. Rock. No, I'm just playing.
Oh,
I'm just playing.
No, but I need something good to happen. I need I need something to root for. A person, an event, something. Those shows that are just bleak, I don't get the point.
So
that's why I have a hard time. We were talking with Micah last week. with Pursuit of Happiness.
Dude, how wild is that little kid?
Dude, we need to bring him on something. Speaking of like having guests on, where it's me and him are just like some week when you're out of town or busy or something, I'm just gonna bring Micah on. I'll have to go pick him up at your house or something because he's like 13.
I gotta tell you what he said though.
What?
So we're leaving here. So he meets. So some of you that have listened to me know that like he's just different. He's a very mature kid. So we got in driving to school. Sometimes he listens to the show, so he knows that occasionally we've wanted to do mornings with Micah, and he's always talking NBA draft or sports or something. But he's very savvy. So we got in the truck and we're heading over to 7-on-7, and he goes, "That's Ravi, right?" And I go, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "I thought he said he didn't like kids." And I go, I laugh. I barely closed the car door. And I go, "Why do you say that?" And he goes, "Well, that day that you were on the show, he said kids were tough to be around." I said, "No, let me get it right. He said you guys are a tough hang."
Stand by that.
And I go, "Where are you going with this?" And he goes, "Oh, man, he seems pretty chill." I was like, "Oh, man, small doses. You guys were talking hoops. I don't know if he's going to take you out to the ballpark and go hit pitches or anything." But
well, I mean, I might, because Micah doesn't act like a kid. Like, I could have an actual adult conversation about stuff I care about with Micah.
That was wild. I even walked out. I came back. I was like,
yeah, we were still going at it.
Like, what are you guys on?
Not like going at it. We were having a conversation. I would hang out with Micah because he doesn't act like a kid.
Because he was telling you why he likes Scoot Henderson better than Wembanyama.
He came at me with what is Asur?
Yeah,
he likes Asur.
He said
Thompson.
He's going to be the best player in the draft.
And I was like, that's not accurate. I appreciate your opinions on Larry Bird, but I'm out on Thompson here. Listen, not saying he's not gonna be good, but
at least he had some rationale to it.
No, he does, and I appreciate that.
Called him a two-way guy. Said he thinks he'll eventually be able to shoot it well enough.
He said he shot it well enough right now, and that's where I push back hard.
Like, he's not a bucket getter yet.
And he's like, "No, well, I think he will." And I was like, "Okay, you can project that. That's fine. Everybody else is. That's cool."
Yeah, he's a cool kid. We'll get him.
We'll have to bring him on, but
he likes. So we try to watch shows, and he likes to watch shows that you have to figure things out. And he's not. I'm not one of those parents yet that watches those shows with my kids that make me uncomfortable, even if I think they're ready for it.
Okay.
Right? Like
it's like a you problem. You just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, like he wanted to watch He Got Game, and there were some parts where I had to still fast forward through and stuff. But like that's where he's at with it, right? Yeah. He wanted to watch He Got Game.
Listen, it's an okay movie.
Well, there was the recruiting thing.
It was interesting.
And Lala and like, some of the language, but
there's interesting stuff in that. It's the recruiting trips that you got the problems.
So wait a minute. You think He Got Game is overrated?
I think it is probably a little overrated. I think it's a pretty good movie. I think people think it's a little better than it is.
Wow.
There's parts of it I really like.
Can you believe Jim Brown made it so long as an actor?
Not really, because
I
don't think he's a very good actor. Yeah,
but he went decades.
Yeah, like he was in a lot of stuff.
Decades,
and it's not
people were casting Jim Brown.
Yeah, it's really strange. I don't understand it at all.
And you better not get a drop in that back seat. I was like, ooh, it's a great line. You gave my man a laxative.
You know what I think it is about that movie? It's like the way it's shot is kind of chaotic.
Yeah, jumpy.
And I just don't love it. I get that it's doing that for a reason.
Yeah.
It just doesn't hit my eye right. So I think that's honestly probably what it is, because the more I'm thinking about it, I like a lot of the stuff with Ray Allen and Denzel, like the father-son stuff and that situation. The recruiting stuff is really interesting and I think way more real than people maybe realized at the time.
Hey, so all those movies, Blue Chips, He Got Game, all those movies.
I don't know that you get
fairly accurate
point shaving as much as you did in like Blue Chips, right? That was the big one.
I'll let you tell it.
I said I don't know. I'd like to hope not. I'm okay with the dirty recruiting. We get into point shaving, I get uncomfortable.
Dude, like that movie, it was ahead of its time.
No, for sure, it was. And like low key, some of those athletes are not bad actors.
No, I know.
Like Ray Allen did a pretty good job.
I thought Travis Best was good.
Travis Best was pretty good.
Did you know Walter McCarty, John Wallace? Like, were you realizing real time that they were in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so I watched it later, right? So I kind of knew them after, like I knew them from after the fact.
Yeah.
Because some of those guys were real young when they were in those movies.
Oh,
and
for
so
sure.
you may not have they weren't really that famous at the time, right? But no, I think
some folks call that low budget.
Well,
you don't have to pay. You're not paying top dollar for it.
Well, this actually goes into the sports thing I thought we might talk about today.
What do you got?
So when they're kind of trying to find under the radar maybe some prospects, some acting prospects that people haven't heard of but are still going to do a good job, right?
Oh, Nebraska recruiting.
This is where I'm going. You feeling me? Right. But here's why does that work in some of those movies, right?
Because of our expectation level.
Ooh, that's not where I was going. I think you might be right, or partially right at least. I think it works in some of those movies because they knew exactly what they wanted those guys to do and who they needed those guys to be. So this is where I wanted to ask, like, genuinely curious your thoughts on this, because I've heard people talk a lot about the in-state recruiting, and that's obviously important. It's been a huge boom, right, in the last couple of weeks. That's not what really caught my eye. We've got 6 guys so far, and at the Nebraska coaching staff has got 6 guys in this class. That's almost a third of their class, because I take kickers out of it because their recruitment's always kind of weird, so I'm taking Cotton.
A little wonky.
Yeah, like I don't really count Alvano. Like, I love Tristan Alvano, but in terms of like comparing other stuff, I kind of take.
Did you think he was a little low? Like the OWH Journal, the rankings had him in at 42.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
This has to be a tough year to put this list together.
Oh yeah, because you're talking about what, half the new roster or half the roster's new.
Yeah,
you're kind of throwing darts at a certain point.
Gotta be tough to put this list together.
But so taking kickers out of it, not because they're not people or players too, but just because they're people too. Because they're different. We're looking at 6 guys that do not have a Power 5 offer elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we saw it last year. Jeremiah Charles, Jalen Lloyd, DeAndre Barnes, guys that they ended up getting didn't have Power 5 offers last year. And first year, half a recruiting cycle, you kind of think, okay, they're filling out the class. Maybe they're taking some chances on
Although
guys.
Lloyd had the partials with Illinois,
for track
Florida,
stuff.
and Texas Tech was for football too. But okay.
But you're looking at guys that maybe are not super highly sought after in the Power 5 community, right?
Gotcha.
And then it happens again this year. They're taking these guys early. This isn't filling out a class. These are guys we want. And they're getting these offers out there. And they're not those non-committable offers because they're committed.
They're saying yes.
They're saying yes, and they're being allowed to say yes, right? So here's where this got me thinking. Because it's really easy to look at that and say, oh, man, what are they doing? We've got these guys that they don't have pictures or stars on the recruiting website until after they get their picture taken at Nebraska.
Kellen Barda, guys like that.
Yeah.
Guthrie.
Rex Guthrie, Jake Peters, Quinn Clark, like a lot. There's 6 of them, okay, that basically nobody else was interested in. Some of them no other FBS team was interested in.
Understood. Quinn Clark told you out loud he only had FCS offers.
Yes, and the websites reflect that. Where my mind went was that I was actually kind of excited about it. And I don't think that was most people's reaction.
And I certainly wouldn't have thought that was yours.
Really?
No.
Where did you think I was going?
Because I think when I think of you, you're such a talent evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but that's why I like it.
You know what? Coming full circle, as I say it out loud, that's your background. Greasy, grimy, find a guy, recruiting evaluator. You were recruiting for some places that nobody
had heard of,
that hadn't had high-end talent.
Yeah.
Okay. So now they're playing to your strengths because you were good at that as an evaluator.
And so here's what excites me.
That makes more sense to me now as I say. How about me just changing as I start to say it out loud, though?
Well, right, because you kind of think something, and you're like, oh, he likes these certain things. It's weird that he likes that. And
because you've been so skeptical. You're kind of skeptical by nature, just in general.
As a person. Yeah. But you kind of started to hit on this. The talent evaluation excites me because I like that they trust their evals more than anything. I don't know if they're good evals or not. Right?
I don't know yet either.
Because I'll be honest, I have seen highlights of some of these guys, haven't seen full game tape, certainly haven't seen like all 22 or anything like that. And I am the first to admit I'm better at evaluating basketball than I am football. Okay, especially at the high school level. But number one, I like that they trust their evals. Mm-hmm. And that gets me really interested as to why they trust their evals to this degree. Because this is kind of extreme.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's a kind of extreme level to say, I don't care that we're in June and that your only offer is from Lindenwood.
Yeah. Some of those guys,
you're getting the offer.
You said it. They didn't have any Power 5 offers. Let alone FBS offers.
Right. And so here's where I'm I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm curious where your head's been at. Because I do like the talent evaluation part of it, but I think it has to be a little bit deeper than that, right? Because in order to be an effective talent evaluator, what do you need? What do you have to see clearly?
Upside, or like the end game. You have to know clearly what you want to be in order to know if somebody can get there.
Correct. Because your vision,
that's how I think, though.
Your vision and your blueprint on how to get there have to be crystal clear.
Oh, yeah.
To take chances on guys like this that you could have probably offered them anytime. 6 months from now, 9 months from now. Yeah. And
some of these guys are saying yes over the weekend.
Yes, yeah. Right? They say yes immediately because they know that's the best offer they're ever going to get. Okay? But that's what really is interesting to me, is why Rhule feels comfortable doing this. Mm-hmm. And where I landed, and this is where I'm curious because you know him better than I do because I don't know him at all. I just from the outside looking in. Is it because of his conviction in what he knows he needs in terms of players?
So I think it's two things. Number one, I think he's evaluated talent across a lot of levels. Mm-hmm. He's evaluated talent to win at Temple. Mm-hmm. He's evaluated talent to build at Baylor. He's evaluated talent to put an NFL roster together. Mm-hmm. So I think his experience in knowing, okay, guys historically have needed a certain baseline of this mm-hmm. just to have a chance.
Yeah.
Right? Just basic baseline. My experience, so it depends on where that particular player is, but my experience with my staff will cover the rest. Mm-hmm. Right?
So in terms of the development?
Yeah.
Because that's the other piece of this, right?
So that's the part I think he thinks. Like, I know you say kids are a tough hang, but like if it's like sometimes people will ask their kids to travel with me. They can't go. We trust DB. Mm-hmm. You take them. You have to get in my car with a certain baseline amount of money.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Like I'm not footing the bill.
Yeah, for meals and whatever and everything else.
But the rest, trust that I'll take care of them. Like, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that's the same way with how they're evaluating talent. I'd like for you to move like this, change the direction. I'd like to be like this. You guys bring that to the table. I'll get you to the rest, because the way that I built my staff, listen, I'm familiar with McGuire. Mm-hmm. I know how SAC coaches. I'm experienced with EJ. Corey Campbell, my strength and conditioning guy. This is what he's about. I've seen him do this. Man, Cooper, he's talent evaluator extraordinaire. Mm-hmm. I trust him. I'm getting to meet this Tony White guy, but man, I'm familiar with Dvorak.
Yeah,
because I know he knows how to coach what I want. So I think it's a combination of things, because they know how they want to play.
So that's the key.
They know how they want to play.
And what's another word for that people get all up in arms about sometimes?
Identity. Gosh, I'm okay. So we may get along. This thing may work.
So because
if I was like, if I said I don't know the last three questions, because a lot of times people ask people what you want to say and they can't answer.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm okay.
No, you're doing good.
Yeah, I'm screwed up at some point.
We're on the same page here, right? Because in my mind, it starts with identity. Mm-hmm. Because you have to know what you need it to look like at the end, right?
1,000%.
So the easiest way is to go get ready-made players that do that, and that's what Alabama does. That's what Ohio State does. Nebraska's not in that spot right now. Nebraska can't really go out and get the ready-made guys right now because they're not coming to Nebraska.
Okay? 1,000%.
That's just the way it is. That's the way it's been for a while. To be fair, to a certain degree, that's almost how it's always been, with a handful of exceptions.
You're talking about a former.
If you want to go all the way
decision
back,
makers, yeah.
If you want to go all the way back, even from when it was good to when it's been bad, you want to go all the way back.
I'm vibing.
Nebraska has had really high-end successful recruiting at times, right? But they have also always had developmental players. Is that fair?
That is absolutely 1,000% fair.
Because they can't consistently count on getting the 4 and 5 star at every position.
So, as I used to always like to say over the last handful of years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, what are you doing in the meantime until you get those good players?
Yeah, you have to get to a point where those good players want to be there.
So, and I felt like I was kind of speaking Portuguese over time because I think it was frustrating for some people, especially listening to me early, right? Because sometimes I'm like, wine or cheese, like you got to give me a little bit of time because I'm already fast forwarding to something down the road.
Yeah.
Listen, and it would drive people crazy. I'd say I used to use Michigan State,
okay,
because when Nebraska first got to the Big Ten, I was like, you cannot be afraid to compare yourself to Michigan State.
A lot of people say Wisconsin or Iowa. Same idea, though.
Okay. So, yeah. Exact same premise, right? Because how Michigan State did it, where they had passed Ohio State and Michigan. Well, Michigan, they took advantage of it down. Listen, those kinds of things happen.
And you have to take advantage of them.
And what has Nebraska not been able to do?
Take advantage of anything.
Of when folks are down.
Anything.
Like Wisconsin is not hitting on all cylinders. And we still
haven't been for a minute.
And we still haven't been able to run them down.
And Iowa's all cylinders isn't that scary, to be fair. It never has.
Not to pull away. Not to pull away from.
They'll have one or two. They'll have 1 year every handful that's really, really impressive. And you're like, man, that's a good football team.
So I'm like, come on, man. Like at some point, what are you doing in the meantime to give yourself a chance to win? And for all these years, I never had these conversations when these games were over. And I was like, man, Team X was so much better. We got beat by Oklahoma in Norman a couple years ago. And at no point did I think, man, if Nebraska only had better players.
No.
Now, they made a couple of plays to their skill guys on the perimeter and they would run after the catch. And I was like, oh, man, that's just a playmaker.
Like 1 or 2 guys.
Right. But even when Ohio State came to Lincoln a couple years ago, and I felt like Ryan Day was trying to lose the game because he just did not assault clock.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I was like, what are they doing?
It was weird.
But anyway.
It was weird.
I didn't say, oh, my God, look how good their players are. They are so – and I knew that they were better.
And there's
when Michigan kicked a field goal to beat Nebraska at night in Lincoln, that team is going to make a run for the college football playoffs. And at no point did I say
that team didn't feel better than Nebraska.
Oh my God, that Ajabo, ooh, Hutch. Like I knew those guys are draft picks, but that's not what dominated the premise. I was like, if we could have just taken better care of the ball in crunch time, or when we had that fantastic drive in the beginning of the first quarter. In the first quarter, we're running trap and veer, and it looks sweet. And then all of a sudden, we throw a YOLO ball, and it gets picked, and they start from the 12-yard line, and it's whatever 9-3 at the half or whatever it was. I'm like, that wasn't about talent. That was about
decision making.
Just
a lot of things that Nebraska could have controlled.
Just settling in on something when it gets chaotic,
especially when something is working, right? And that's where the identity becomes so important.
Well, he talks about situational football. What are you going to rest in?
You're going to rest in your identity.
I still think it's funny you're talking about this as we get all super worked up. I still think people are talking about the wrong thing with this 2023 team.
Okay.
We keep talking about offense and Jeff Sims and identity and tight ends and fullback and run
no, it's
game.
not going to be about that.
Dude, I think it's defense.
The defense is going to carry them. If the defense is what I think they can be, that's what carries them to the upper end of some people's hopes.
I seriously think, and I think Nebraska's staff thinks that. As Coach Rhule, what he wants to hang his hat on, I bet you $1 to a dime, he's going to say the black shirts.
100%. Well, especially
it doesn't have, but we keep talking about these offensive pieces and the quarterback play and this, that, because that's what we've been conditioned
and we understand offense better. It's easier. I think in most sports, we were talking about this again off air about basketball. A lot of people don't understand the intricacies of a basketball defense.
And what you're talking about when we were talking about the runs and the
coaching.
things that coaches do with stopping runs
and adjustments
and defensive adjustments
and defensive schemes and things like that. Defense is harder to understand.
I agree.
Because people are especially in basketball,
they don't really get it either.
People are always going to score, right?
And there's a reason there's positive yards.
Yes, and there's always going to be positive yards. There's going to be positive movement. You're not shutting anybody out in basketball. You're not keeping anybody to 0 yards in football. So it's hard to always understand when negative, quote unquote, things are happening to a unit, but they're still performing well to what you need them to do. So we think about identity in terms of offense almost exclusively, right? That's kind of our default mindset because most people just watch the football, right? Or they watch the basketball.
Completely agree.
And
completely agree.
That's not a criticism. It's okay to watch the game that way. If that's how you want to watch a game, I have no problem with that, right? But you are missing some things. And I think what you'd be missing on this year's Nebraska team is that the defense is likely their identity, right? And so they can go out and offer guys as athletes because they're like, I can see how this guy fits into the 3-3-5, or I can see how this guy could work his way into being an edge rusher or a disruptive playmaker on defense in the defensive backfield. And so you look at some of these guys and you say, okay, maybe I don't see it. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe nobody else gets it. But I want to go back to some of the things that separated Nebraska back in the day.
You want me to validate you real quick?
I would love that.
So, because it's funny, people, and I don't even say this on my own show, but on the pod, right? You're talking about substance and what they want to be and who they want to be. So Caleb was down in Lincoln, and people have their opinions about whatever, right? But I'll tell you what the staff said.
Yeah.
So Coach Coop is like, hey, today was one of the most impressive. This is him sending this to me. I'm on the road. I'm in Chicago. It says, today was one of the most impressive visits I've ever had with a young man and a recruit in particular. I absolutely want to coach your kid, and I feel like he can be a difference maker in my room. Mature, smart, loves football, emotionally intelligent, things that I don't take very lightly, and I never say unless I mean. Very, very impressive. You've done a great job with him, Pops. You should be proud. Is there anything in there?
Nothing about position, nothing about physical ability, nothing.
Not one word.
Not a single word.
So what is
I saw that text. That's a long text.
Yeah. Right? So I sometimes I chuckle because I think revisionist history says to us all we care about are it's just talent.
Like measurables.
You only have to have a certain baseline of talent.
And I think
after that, it's about everything but talent. Now, what we can't get our minds around is we don't know what that baseline is. We try to speculate because we see what other teams and so we're like, you need a dude, or you need listen. In every year we see a team or teams that defy it. TCU, the Miami Heat, the Tampa Bay Devil Rays.
Just stick college football. Kansas State, TCU last year. All those teams, right?
Yeah.
None of those teams you look at and say loaded with talent.
Yeah.
TCU played for a national championship.
Listen,
you cannot convince me that TCU is appreciably more talented than Nebraska last year.
I know.
Am I crazy?
No. Listen, I'll tell you on the high school level, Bellevue West lost 4 games.
Nobody was more talented than them.
How? Because it's not just about talent. Right? So you're spot on.
It's not just about physical talent. Because makeup is a different kind of talent, right? Like work ethic is a different type of talent, right? But we're talking about, it's not all about physical talent. That's the baseline you're talking about.
How did Mac have Hurley's number? It wasn't talent.
No, I don't think the talent gap is huge there.
But who's going to have more guys get drafted?
UConn already has.
Okay. right?
But I don't think the gap is huge. But you're right. UConn's got more talent.
At some point, so my point
saw it. They won a national title last year.
My point in that
that
analogy is you need a certain baseline, but after that, it's about way more than just, even with Bama and Georgia.
It's always been about way more, because
I compare Ohio State to Michigan.
Yeah.
Ohio State is recruited better than Michigan composite rankings.
Consistently, yeah.
But Michigan has recruited well enough, and they're no slouch. Listen, Michigan recruits their ass
off.
off.
But there's a gap.
There's a gap.
Probably like a 10-spot gap. Ohio State goes top.
There's a gap, right?
Ohio State goes top 5. Michigan usually goes top 15.
So at some point, it's about something else. Until Nebraska, I'm just validating you with this. And it wasn't just to hype him up. It's just to let you know that you're right. Until they get to needing to go from 9 wins to 11 or 10 to 12, which is probably more talent-driven discussion, they're going with substance over style.
Or stars, even,
right?
If you want to go recruiting.
They're trusting in what they want, that they think will get them over the hump initially. And remember what I said in the analogy. They'll do the rest later.
So here's
they'll fill in the gaps. You can get in my car with a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
Trust me.
To fill in the gaps.
I'll fill in the gaps later on.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I got you.
As long as you bring your baseline.
Yep. That's the way that I think they think.
Which is interesting, right? Because I think it's one of the portable things. This is something you've talked about before. What's portable, right? Nebraska's been successful in the past. They've been successful in the not too distant past, even if you want to go back to like 2009.
Yeah.
Right. That was a really good football team that if they had
Mike Riley had them 8-0.
Yes. They were top. They were number 7, I think, in the country.
Yeah.
That was 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
16 or 17.
So it's not that long ago, right? That's something we can still remember. They were an undefeated top 10 team more than halfway through the season. Okay. That is not that long ago. Here's what is something that's always interested me, and I think it does you too. We've always kind of been looking for, because I think a lot of people understand intrinsically because of where we're at and some of the geographic limitations that are, I think, overblown, but they do exist. What can Nebraska's advantage be, right? Back in the day, strength and conditioning was a huge thing, right? Huge advantage. Now everybody does it. Facilities were a huge advantage. Now it's the cost of doing business, right?
Being on television.
Television was a huge advantage. Now everybody's on TV, right? We thought it was going to be NIL. We thought that was going to be the difference maker. And maybe it is a little bit, but people caught up pretty quick, right? Nebraska had a plan before most people. Everybody else kind of figured their stuff out within like a year or two, especially the big boys, right? So NIL, probably not the huge difference maker, probably closer to facilities where you just have to have it, right? Is it as simple as if you're just better at evaluating the talent that you need, that's the difference maker?
Well, look at
is that too simple?
Look at Minnesota, look at Iowa, look at Wisconsin, look at Illinois.
Bielema was really good at that.
Listen,
when they hired him, I was like, man, that's a really good hire.
It's kind of scary.
It is scary because he's really good at that.
Yes, he is. And he knows the conference. And if nothing else,
and he knows exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what his system needs.
People used to always get on me about, Iowa's this and Iowa's that. And I'm like, listen, they have an advantage. Iowa has an advantage because they know what they want the picture to look like.
Identity.
So they know if they want colored pencils, crayons, marker, a number 2 versus ballpoint.
It's like putting a puzzle together, right?
And here Nebraska is over the last 15 years. Sometimes it was a marker. Sometimes they wanted a pen.
Nebraska and then it was a pencil. A puzzle without the picture on the box. It's that's what they've been trying to do.
And that's where I'm hoping that this staff has an advantage. And I said this, I've said it a couple times lately, the last 3 weeks maybe. And I'm said, this is just what good staffs do. We're just not used to it.
Yeah, it feels a lot different.
So we don't know how to process the information.
Yeah.
Oh, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. Oh, you're a hater. Just buy in. You're drinking the Kool-Aid. you're just negative because it's been so toxic. And all the while, if we just pull back and we just say to ourselves simply, what do I want in leadership?
That's why I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, by the way.
What do I want in leadership?
Because they check those boxes for me.
How do they not, though?
That's what I mean.
Right?
That's why I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. It's not because of the recruits, but that's why I believe, that's why I look at the recruits and I'm like, okay, it's not that they can't get anybody else.
You want to start?
Those are the guys they wanted.
Hey, casting a vision.
Yeah.
Hit that box?
Mm-hmm.
Common language.
Yep.
Common goal.
Yep. You know my big one. You haven't even gotten to it yet.
Administration, staff, players seem to be on the same page. They check that box?
Yes.
Okay. What else we missing?
Accountability. That's my big one.
Oh, that's
my big one. You know that about me.
Hey, did you see it? You saw the list for his assistants in the offseason?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that's how I looked at it because I'm immature. Do you know how petty that seems?
I was gonna say, you know how much work that is.
It seems like you're just managing me to be managing me.
It seems like micromanagement.
But then I looked at it like this was my initial knee jerk. But then I looked at it like this. He's telling you what best practices is. He's
clearly setting expectations.
So that I had to flip the script.
He's clearly setting expectations.
I looked at it as a parent. I was like, I don't want to know what my kid is doing in college a couple times a month.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to grow up.
Yeah.
Then I was like, well, wait a minute. What if he's having a bad couple of weeks?
Yeah.
And it's not a surprise to me because you've been in communication with me.
Because
that'd be cool.
That's a whole different thing. Right?
That I would like that.
That's a whole different thing.
Right? So, like, I'm with, like, Rhule-Aid, no Rhule-Aid, believe, toxic, 20 years of bad. What do they simply check the boxes of what I want in leadership?
Of what I believe it takes to be a good leader.
At least give yourself a chance to have success.
Right. And that's what I've said this to people is you can't win any games in the offseason, right? You can't go out and chalk up W's. They're not going to start the season 3-0 because they don't get 3 wins as a handicap because they had a good offseason, right? You can lose games in the offseason.
There's zero question.
You can go into situations where you are going to take L's in the regular season because you didn't do things right.
You're prepared in the offseason, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it does matter. I know people get sick of it because that's the only place the wins have seemingly existed in the last 10, 20 years to a degree that we care about. But it does matter. And translating it to the field, that's the next step. But if you don't start here, good luck translating it to the field.
1,000%.
Because we saw with the last staff, what happens in the offseason does get translated to the field, good and bad.
1,000%.
Right?
Hey, and how about this? How about how you finally have a staff assembled where now there'll be some schools and there'll be some job opportunities from some guys on the staff.
Tony White comes to mind.
But nobody wants that guy's job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The amount of respect they have for the job and the guy that's doing the job is irreplaceable.
Yeah, and I don't think it's that common. Like, I think it's unusual.
It's just nobody's thinking, man, when Rhule, after he's gone, man, this is I just don't get the sense from that staff. Now, it's not to say that nobody's going to want McGuire in a year or two. Sure. Nobody's going to come knocking on Knighton's door because they will.
Yeah.
But they don't want his job.
Yeah.
Don't ever undersell that.
Well,
that's a big deal, at least to me.
It matters, right? Because on a coaching staff, there has to be a level of trust.
And
if
I'm not going to sit in your meetings,
and if you think
I'm with you
that other people on your staff want your job or think they could do your job better than you, really hard to have that trust. That's not just a football thing. That's an everybody thing, right?
Doesn't matter where you are.
Really hard to sit in a meeting with a boss
at Aetna,
work
or Mutual
anywhere,
or PayPal, anywhere,
and say, okay, if you want that guy's job, really hard to have a good level of trust there.
Yeah.
Right? If you want another job, let's say, hey, I'm on this track right now. I would really love to get to the management track. I don't need your job, but I want to be at your level.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different thing.
No question.
Right? And if you have a good relationship, you have good trust, the guy at that level will help you get to that level.
And it's how I've always tried to piece it together. I think coaches coach coordinators, coordinators coach position coaches coach players. The overseer is the head coach. When he can empower you to facilitate that kind of hierarchy and that kind of pecking order, you're cooking with gas.
And is there any doubt in your mind, we can wrap up here, is there any doubt in your mind that Matt Rhule wants to see everybody on his staff that wants to get to a different level, that he will do everything in his power to help them get there? Because that's why there's trust.
There's no question.
That's why there's trust. No he wants Tony White to be a head coach someday. He wants Garrett McGuire to be an OC someday.
And you hired guys like Tony White and Garrett McGuire who have such reverence for those that came before them. Tony White, at the end of his coaching clinic, had 10 names that he wanted to thank for people that had helped him get to where he was. Coach McGuire, with his dad at Texas Tech, and having Coach Rhule had given his dad a chance. Just the level of reverence and respect for the profession gives you a chance.
That is Dish and Ish episode 1. We'll be back every week. I think you're going to come back?
Yeah, I'm here, man. We'll
come back. We'll be back next
Wednesdays.
week.
We'll see we'll pick a day to drop the pod.
I think we're dropping them. I don't know. We'll figure it out. That's above my pay grade.
Above mine, too.
We will drop these every week. That's Damon Benning. I'm Ravi Lulla. Thank you to Shane Schillerberg for producing. This has been Dish and Ish.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.